Hi, welcome to the bathtub, where when you hear this sound effect, okay, that's enough of that. So that means, and you see this rinky-dink trophy, and you see me wearing a purple shirt. This is a new thing here at the bathtubs. I wear a purple shirt for the All-Bathtub Hall of Fame. We're giving a all-bathtub shout-out to another great writer who unfortunately is dead. We're really sorry. She died this week, Alison Lurie. We won't beat around the bush, but she had a good life from what I can tell. I didn't know her personally. Our serious heartfelt sympathies to her family and friends, but at the same time, she had a great life, great career, wrote lots of wonderful books, and I just wanted to put this out very quickly, simply because I was a big fan of hers. I wanted to do an All-Bathtub Hall of Fame for Lurie since we came up with the idea 6 months ago, and now we have to get it in there a little quickly. I'm going to have a sip of my martini. I'm going to toast the memory of Alison Lurie, wonderful novelist, very nice lady. The couple times I've met her, spent time with her, and just talk very, very quickly about some of her work. I don't have a lot of her books with me. I don't know where they are. They're somewhere in boxes or something. Some of the stuff I literally have not unpacked everything, but I have all of Lurie's novels somewhere in my life. I've read almost every one of her books, except I think I have not read her first book, Love and Friendship. This is her most well-known book in some ways, The War Between the Tates. This is one of her first big novels. It was about a divorce. Many of her books are about divorce and about, in some ways, the liberation of divorce. Most of her characters do better after a divorce, particularly the women, who were kind of going nowhere relationships, and their husbands tended to be cheating on them, like in The War Between the Tates. And they found a bit of freedom from the divorce, and they had a better life as a result of it. This is another one about there's a divorce that eventually develops in this book. There's a couple divorces in this, actually. The Nowhere City, one of my all-time favorite books about Los Angeles. I'm going to put a link to my recent piece in the LA Times talking about this book, and very funny. She was sometimes classified as a satirist. I don't think she was a satirist. She was a novelist. In some ways, she was kind of a romantic novelist. She often wrote about relationships. She's very unsentimental. There's no cornball sentimentality in her at all. But at the same time, she's unsentimental, and she's sort of honest and direct about human relationships and human emotions. Who she reminds me of the most in all of her books is a bit of Jane Austen. So you know, Jane Austen, every time you open a Jane Austen novel, whether it's Emma or Mansfield Park or whatever, the main principal woman in it meets a guy who she doesn't like, and you know right then they're going to get married, so they don't like each other. There's a little of that in Lurie, where the characters tend to meet people and think, the women often meet these guys. I think she meets a guy who runs a bookshop, the central character in War Between the Tates. I think his name is Zap. I'm not sure. He's kind of a hippie-esque guy, and she comes from a middle-class family, and he's kind of hippie looking for her, a little too old, a little too scraggly, and she gets to really like him by the end of the book, as I recall. At the same time, the men often run off with these young women who look very glamorous, and the young women often act like, oh, you're so wonderful, and you're such a genius, and once they get to know these girls, the girls just dump them. They usually dump these old guys. It happens quite a bit in these books. This is one of her wonderful books, late books, called Last Resort. These are just the books I have on the shelf. I reviewed this in London in 1998 or something. I liked it very much. It's set in Key West. The central protagonist is one of my favorite characters in Lurie. She's what's called a writer's wife. This was a very common term used in the 50s and 60s. Women who were kind of known for being kind of the supporting half of a relationship, where the man was writing novels and was quite famous for being a novelist, and the wives did a lot of homekeeping and putting on meals and being kind of glamorous when they went out, and they were very important people in the literary world. There were quite a few of these types of women around, and Lurie does a kind of fun bit with this, where she has the central character as a writer's wife for a kind of an awful old guy. He's much older. He's kind of a nature writer, and he's totally self-centered and kind of he is an asshole. And it's about her going in Key West when she starts to develops a relationship with a woman there who runs a local, I can't remember, hotel. She's an artist, I know that. And it's her relationship and kind of, again, almost a divorce from this man who she's been living with for years. And everyone kind of looks down at her because she's this writer's wife. And for Lurie, the interesting part of relationships and of characters is to look who they really are, what really makes them happy. And in the last resort, this woman actually enjoys being a writer's wife. She likes researching. She does all the guys' research. She likes doing all the paperwork. She doesn't like being famous or having. She likes being in the shadow where she can kind of do what she wants to do and have her own life. And she likes keeping her house and cooking and so forth. And it's at the end of the book, she goes back to that life. And when this book came out, it got a lot of bad press. I think really stupid press. But the joke was not for Lurie that she believes that's how women should live. But like any good novelist, she kind of let her character come to life, look through this world she lived in, and find what made her happy. And at the end of the book, she finds what makes her happy. I don't have one of her best books. I can't find it. If I was to pick one book for you to read for Lurie, probably Foreign Affairs would be one. It's one of her most famous books. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's about she often does couples. So her books are often based around two people. The Nowhere City is about the Cattlemans, a man and a wife who moved to Los Angeles. And War Between the Tates is between the Tates. And the Foreign Affairs is a couple, a man and a woman who are from the same university who go to London. And the woman sounds a little bit like Lurie. She's a middle-aged woman. She's not incredibly attractive. She starts off in the beginning of the book. She's had a bad marriage, and she says very early in the book, she says, average-looking women don't have romance in their lives, but they actually have really good sex lives. There's a whole long section at the beginning of the Foreign Affairs about how this woman in Foreign Affairs kind of always can accept. She always had lots of sexual relationships, but she doesn't have romantic relationships. And it's about how she kind of has a romantic relationship when she moves to London for one of these sabbaticals. At the same time, this partner of hers, who's not partner, a colleague of hers, goes to London and meets this glamorous upper middle class actress who lives in Hampstead, who's really charming, and she treats him like he's so special, and he just thinks he's gone to heaven, and she's a horrible creep, and she just takes this guy apart. And it's a lovely book about the difference, the way English people and American people misunderstand one another, and the romantic relationships between them. And Lurie knew London very well, and writes really well about that dissonance between Americans and English. I love all of her books. I have not read, like I said, Love and Friendship, but I could recommend. I liked even her last book, which was called Truth or Consequences. She writes about the way relationships and the complexities of relationships and how people become attracted to one another and how they become unattracted to one another really well, and she always makes you laugh. She's not a cynical writer at all. And there's something very charming about all of her books. She writes really well, really clearly and really sharply. And she refuses to write the right character, write the way tell the stories about people, men and women particularly, the way you're supposed to, but she knew what she was doing. She also wrote a wonderful memoir of her friendship with James Merrill and James Merrill's partner, David, I forget his partner's name, but based around the writing of one of my favorite long poems we talked briefly about on the bathtub in the past, which is The Changing Light at Sandover, and it's about her friendship with them. And she brings the same kind of, no nonsense affection. She's affectionate, and yet she's not sentimental, which is what I like about her. And she writes a really nice little memoir about these two people, which many people were upset by too. I don't know why people started to get very upset by Alison Lurie in her later books. That's how I saw it anyway. And I saw that, particularly in England, I don't think they gave her the credit she deserved for her last 3 or 4 books, which were all excellent, by the way. Okay, so try, if you don't know her work, try Foreign Affairs. You'll probably really enjoy it. If you like Los Angeles novels, one of my all-time favorites is The Nowhere City, and I'll put a little link below here to my piece at the LA Times, remembering what I loved about Lurie's work. Okay, happy bathing, stay safe. Akma's watching. Come on, we're trying not to buy from Amazon for Christmas presents and stuff. It's hard, I know. I'm doing my best. I broke down a couple times, but mostly I'm doing pretty good. Okay, stay safe.